On the morning of Monday, March 12, 1888, the east coast of the United States, from Virginia to Maine, awoke to the most severe blizzard in American history. 4 feet of snow fell from the skies, and fierce winds created snowdrifts up to 50 feet high.
The blizzard of 1888 crippled the entire Northeast and shut down all of the streets and all the transportation in the cities. It forced a lot of soul-searching and thinking about how cities moved and lived and breathed and operated.
With over 400 dead and citizens left scared and angry, the blizzard underlined a transportation crisis that had been escalating for decades. In a booming economy, cities were flooded with thousands of immigrants and rural Americans seeking opportunity in a newly mechanized world.
The problem is that everybody is crowded into a fairly small area. The available modes of transportation are slow and cumbersome. The city is growing, but the transit system isn't growing with it.
America was in danger of choking on its own progress. In no place was the problem more overwhelming than the nation's most congested city, Boston, where nearly 400,000 people packed into a downtown of less than a square mile.
There are almost 8,000 horses in Boston pulling the trolley railways around the city. It is a cacophony of noise, dust, horse manure, smells in the downtown area, extremely congested.
As America struggled to address its transportation crisis, leaders in Boston pursued a radical solution. But their race to build the nation's first subway would clash against political gridlock, selfish businessmen, and a terrified citizenry.
The idea of a subway in Boston was an enormous risk. It was a breathtaking jump into the unknown, and that can't be underestimated. This was a jump into the unknown.
In early 1882, a young American naval officer on leave walked the crowded streets of London. Frank Sprague, just 24 years old, had heard of the world's first subway, the London Underground. Hailed as an engineering marvel, he wanted to see it for himself. As he descended from the street down the steps into darkness, he could hear the roar of the trains thundering through the tunnels below.
In 1863, when the London Underground opened, it was a coal-powered steam engine running underground. The subway coming through London's tubes was spewing dark soot and smoke and sparks into the air. One journalist who rode on the London subway compared it to standing next to someone blowing cigar smoke in your face for the entire time. It was just a miserable riding experience.
Sprague, an aspiring inventor, thought there had to be a better way. It was the age of electrical invention. The light bulb, the telephone, the dynamo. And Sprague, having studied electricity at the Naval Academy, was full of ideas.
Frank Julian Sprague is a driven person. A colleague once said of Frank Sprague, it seemed as though he had wires coiling and uncoiling inside of him. He was constantly in motion.
Sprague had spent a year at sea with the Navy, inventing in his head.
It's very cerebral. He keeps a notebook, and in the notebook, he draws all these schematics, all these blueprints, all these drawings. He sketches out these ideas. There are armatures. There are new improved versions of arc lighting. There are electric motors. And the notebook is, you can almost feel the energy. It vibrates. It really does. He senses that this new force, electricity, it seems almost limitless in its potential. And above all, he senses that electricity can move things. If people can learn how to harness it and put it to work in the form of electric motors.
With his frequent trips underground while in London, Sprague came up with a revolutionary plan. He sketched out a subway system where electricity would supply the power. It would be conducted to the trains from an overhead source, through a motor, and then back to the rails below. Sprague was so confident in his idea that he immediately applied for a patent.
In this era, late 19th century, electricity is magic. And it has a magical set of effects. But also, there's a great deal of anxiety that went with the magic of it. It's invisible, it's very powerful, it can kill you, but you can't see it. So there's all sorts of anxieties. You've got potency and invisibility. You can argue the science, but the fear is there.
As cities across America were being wired for electricity, newspapers reported on horrific accidents. Sprague's vision for a subway in America depended on the public overcoming its fear of this unsettling power source. Convincing Americans that traveling underground was a good idea would be an even more daunting challenge.
There was an enormous fear of going underground in this restricted environment. One of the health considerations at the turn of the century was tuberculosis and pulmonary disease. And people were just concerned that traveling in this underground environment could be very detrimental to health.
The underground is scary for two reasons. One is the association with death. We just know that in the underworld we are getting closer to another realm. But the underworld is also scary because it's not friendly to human life. Never was, never will be. Everything you do down there has to be done with engineering to enable humans to survive. You put those two together and you can see why people are afraid of the underworld.